I have not seen the company competitively show up in a single deal. I think they're sitting somewhere in a corner trying to, reduce handling time and do it slowly. I think it's a fool's errand. I think
Interesting.
I think you might as well burn that money.
Today, my guest is Nikola, the CEO of PolyAI. Nikola spent 2 years inside of Apple working on Siri, and he left frustrated. He knew there was a better way. He knew technology could do much better. He has since then raised over $200 million to build enterprise voice AI agents. He has landed a ton of seven-figure contracts with banks, healthcare companies, hotels, and hospitality brands. This is not easy, but he managed to crack the code.
Everyone bought into the whole theory that voices that only old people call and chat will take over the world. That's not true for any generation.
Right.
Gen Z has a 71% proclivity to calling over texting. You go to older generations, it goes up to 98% because people just love talking.
In our conversation, we dig into how he sales enterprise deals, how the quality of your deployment team matters way more than your demo, and how technology wins when it comes to enterprise deployments.
Because when that BPO goes to an enterprise and says, I'm going to replace this with AI, they just have laughter. It's like your electricity company showing up at your front door to tell you how they're going to give you a better laptop.
Do you think that's because the margins are so thin?
Pricing is the problem,
Yeah.
first and foremost. I'd say it's at least 60% of it, where they're not paid on outcome. They flirted with it. There have been waves of the BPO industry trying to do exactly that and then outbidding each other, going really low, losing money on huge contracts. We're talking tens, hundreds of millions.
If you're an AI founder selling into markets with entrenched incumbents, this one is for you. There is no more competitive markets than the markets for AI agents in support. It's super competitive, yet Nikola is in there, winning accounts, going vertical, driving big deals. Subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And with that, I bring you Nikola. I have Nikola here, who is joining us for the Get Paid podcast. We're going to talk about his journey with PolyAI and how he went from a research project in Cambridge University to becoming one of the pioneers in voice AI and support, and now growing into anything that is agent related for customer success, customer support, and customer experience.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming.
Absolutely.
So let's start from the beginning. What made you think that this was a productive area of research when you were in Cambridge?
Yeah, I actually ended up joining a different startup straight out of my undergrad called Vocal IQ. And that was started by a guy who had won a full lectureship at Cambridge and then dropped out to start this company. So I was quite taken by that. And he started it with another guy who is a pioneer in speech recognition, a guy called Steve Young, a famous professor in the space. And they were just closing their seed round. I met them I don't know, probably mid-June. I was working for them 1st of July. And I really liked the prototype. Did not work, but the mission was exciting. It was a machine you could talk to, right? This is back in 2014. Siri is a gimmick. It can barely set an alarm. Alexa is not a thing yet. And a year and a bit later, we were acquired by Apple. So classic
there you go.
deep learning acqui-hire from very early on.
Interesting.
But I really enjoyed the whole startup thing. So I was gotta do it again. And
so wait, do you work in Siri?
Yeah, for 2 years.
Because Siri still sucks.
No comment. You saw the Google announcement. I think, well, I can't talk directly about, what we did. It's a really difficult instance of first mover disadvantage. There's also a deeper product question, which is do you use Siri or any of them?
I use Alexa a lot.
What do you use it for?
Set up timers, tell me stories, play music. What time is it? Tell me a joke. I don't know. My kids talk to walls. So now whenever we walk into a house, just talk to a wall, and when the wall doesn't answer back, they were like, "What's going on with this house?
What's wrong with this house?" Yeah.
So it's a common, it's a pattern in my house.
Yeah. My year and a half old daughter was yelling at a TV, "Hey Google, hey Google, hey Google." She was getting very frustrated, now over the weekend. You just listed 90% of the use case. I think the only one you missed is turn on the lights if you have
right. But you need the light. Yeah.
That's it. That is what people use these things for. And whether it's Apple, Google, Amazon, they all kind of work. They they don't work 100% of the time, which is frustrating. And it kind of tells you why the dichotomy is this. What people expect from Siri when they say with that emotion, Siri sucks, what they expect is a Jarvis-like entity that does anything.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And what's really funny is, look, ChatGPT has in many ways reached that level already.
Yeah.
And some people use voice mode, but I tend to find that it's mostly founders, that kind of like, the apostles of our industry who are doing it because they want to and because they're insisting on it.
Yeah.
It hasn't really found organic product market fit yet. The average Joe in the street doesn't really engage in deep, thoughtful conversation with ChatGPT over the voice channel.
Oh, the voice
right?
channel. Okay.
They do over text quite a bit, but the promise of what people wanted Siri to do never really materialized. And by far, like the CarPlay scenarios, like navigation, sending text messages while you drive, remains like the most sticky use case.
Yeah.
Again, I have no Apple internal data. I assume it's true. But that was one thing. And like that got me really frustrated because I was like, okay, obviously you look at like, what if I made it 10 times better? And I mean, I did see a way, and I think that what we build is 10 times better, but it's not sufficiently better to completely change what Siri is to the average member of the population. So I think you need to step in between, which is still, I think, and it's still not done, is agents for customer service, right? Where if people call a company, get AI on the other side, can you like make it good enough so that they don't go like Siri sucks or that agent sucks with the same, like emotion in their voice?
Yeah, bigger,
Because that's the name of the game right now. Like, can you like do that?
Yeah.
Change people's perspectives so that they go like, oh, thank God they've got AI on the other side.
Right.
And it is like better than a tired, overworked BPO worker who has been onboarded 2 days ago, has no clue what you're asking them about, and is scrambling to find the answer.
Yeah.
Because that is mostly, not mostly, but like how many of the large contact centers operate today.
Right. Okay, so you are acquired by Apple. Siri still sucks. You're frustrated.
2 years later, we start PolyAI.
2 years later, okay, what was the insight? Like, what was the thing that made you say, this is going to make it 10x better?
There was no insight. There's just a deep commitment to cracking it, no matter what it takes, right?
That's
so, like, we didn't even have a decision to go after customer service when we started PolyAI.
Okay.
Right? We did, like, a pilot with Samsung to make Bixby better. That's even harder. Siri, given the level of investment and all. We worked with like automotive companies and the in-car voice assistants. Man, if Siri sucks, then like good luck with any of the
I don't even try.
Ones.
I don't even. They also
accidentally when you press the button, right? And then you regret it. Then we work
because like Tesla has like voice mode and it sucks just as much.
It's a hard problem, right? I mean, people act as if it's all solved now and like the next thing, and we love doing that in tech.
Yeah.
Like, fact of the matter is speech recognition fails. Like, good luck with my last name.
Right.
But good luck with many easier things than that.
Right.
And then background noise, all of that is still quite a like difficult problem when it comes to just like the raw hardware of it, right?
Right.
And when it fails because of that. And there's not much you need in terms of higher level reasoning. You need better understanding.
Yeah. And it's all analog. That's the thing that is really interesting, right? Like the problems that you're solving are analog problems. Like,
well, the speech recognition level, yeah.
Okay, so you launch yourself into the abyss with this idea of just like making it better. Like, walk us through like what went from there to like initial customers, initial success, initial traction.
Yeah. So I mean, like, first year and a half, we were like piloting all sorts of things. We were still mostly consumer oriented. And then we started looking at the contact center because it became clear to us just doing market research that if 2% of Britain, Canada, America have like 2% of the working population in the contact center, plus all the offshore labor supporting their companies, it's a huge problem, right? Then you look at the attrition of the average contact center, and it can be over 100% a year.
Okay.
So it's an impossible task. Most people there are not thinking about how to do their jobs better. They're just hiring and hiring and hiring. They're not firing non-performers. They remove themselves. Yeah. Or they get removed. But like top performers.
I heard they just don't show up. Like one day they just show up and like boom, you just lost like
100%.
A seat.
No. When you look at the modeling, like the average no-show rate on a day can be like 10% easily.
Oh my God. Right? Can you imagine? Like 10% of your company just doesn't show up.
Doesn't show up. Like stochastically random.
Yeah.
But at least it can be modeled. So you can staff up quite well.
You just don't know where.
Yeah. Well, I mean, usually it's like big sites. So you do have some control over just like the raw numbers that you need to inflate to get enough people in.
Right.
A really difficult problem, right? So I was like, if you're going to work on this meaningfully, if you cut down even 15-20% of the calls coming into an enterprise's contact center, you've done a tremendous job, right?
Right.
So for a while, we toyed with the idea of doing full-on vertical integration. So acquiring a BPO company.
Yep.
And then offering to be like an AI-powered BPO.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because like, most of this software has historically run like a managed service.
Yeah.
Much like BPOs are a managed service just for people, right? So there are synergies there. And in theory, it sounds great.
Yeah.
Right? And like my simple mind, it's like, okay, like you automate some calls, you accelerate people in other calls, you reduce the cost per call. Over time, you prove that the margin expansion thing works.
Yeah.
Hopefully you trade more like a tech company than a BPO.
Yeah.
You definitely trade somewhere in between.
Right.
Which is still better.
Yeah.
Then you raise more money, probably more debt.
Yeah.
Buy a bigger one.
Yeah.
Truth is, like, it doesn't work. Probably the closest thing I've ever made to a McKinsey-style presentation is the board deck from late 2019, where I kind of explain why you shouldn't be doing that.
Okay.
I think, interestingly, on your kind of like side of what you're interested in, like, pricing is the problem, first and foremost. I'd say it's at least 60% of it, where they're not paid on outcome.
Yeah.
They've flirted with it. There have been waves of the BPO industry trying to do exactly that, and then outbidding each other, going really low, losing money on huge contracts. We're talking like tens, hundreds of millions. And then kind of like defaulting back to like the building blocks.
What's interesting? Do you think that's because the margins are so thin in a BPO? Because the margins are very thin. The margins are very thin.
Yeah.
So if nothing else, you can just deliver a better service and just make better margin with your service, right?
Well, not really. You're paid how you're paid.
No. If you're an AI enabled BPO, like if you were to buy a BPO, let everybody go, run PolyAI as the human, and get paid on that.
Well, here come like the second two problems. You're not allowed to do that. Like they're not buying a service that is abstracted away behind you handle the SLA however you want.
Yeah.
Like what people miss and like to miss is that the BPO is incredibly tightly managed by the enterprise.
Oh,
the conversation between me, the buyer of a service, and you, the BPO, is like, Manny, you committed to those SLAs. Like if I'm paying you for humans, it's like, hire me a few more. And like, I'll like you more than the next guy if you charge me less and you are more reactive to hiring those people quickly.
Interesting.
And hopefully your people are better. I think everyone struggles to get the performance out of BPO to onboard, RAM.
Yeah.
And then it's really just the shades of like how terrible service is from one and the other.
Right.
And look, it's not just the BPO's fault. It's as much as the buyer's fault for having 5 of them and playing them off each other for lower cost. But that is what the industry looks like today, right, in practice.
Even today?
Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
Right. So, and then, I think like it's from our like ivory towers of tech where let's be very candid. Funding is flush.
Yeah.
Margins are high.
Yeah.
Like we're paid to create something that is the future, right? In doing that, like you and I don't have to worry about whether this podcast studio has cost X or Y.
Right.
It doesn't really matter.
Right.
Whereas like you go to that side of a business for any business and every penny counts. Like really deeply, right?
Yeah.
So if you were to be the BPO, like the second part was actually more comical, right? Because when that BPO goes to an enterprise and says, I'm going to replace this with AI, they just die of laughter. It's like your, electricity company showing up at your front door to tell you how they're going to, give you a better laptop.
Yeah.
Like,
what's
better
pretty
setup
interesting
for you doing your work.
Yeah. So we had Tascos, which is not a big BPO, but it's a small one.
I know Tascos.
So we had Tascos CEO and founder on the podcast, and they had to go private to make that switch because they knew that it was going to be a little turbulence in the market as you renegotiate those contracts to take out all the teeth around like how many actual humans you're going to have in the contract, so that they're able to move out of, count of humans to like, what are the outcomes you're looking for? Yeah. You see what I mean? But he couldn't do that in the public market.
Well, I mean, the question is, can they do it at all, right? And to what extent?
Right.
Because
but if they do, they will be massively successful. If they don't, then they're stuck.
Well, here's the spiel, right? Like, if they can do it at scale, they've become a different kind of business. Right?
100%. Yeah.
They've become like a tech services provider,
right?
Operating a piece of technology, a managed service that is technology-based rather than human-based. In doing that, like it has to break the current model in a way where if like they're building your automated AI thing on your behalf,
right.
They do it better than BPO 2, 3, and 4, and then they are a lot cheaper and higher quality. which is possible. Like we've helped many a company do it, right? The question then is for that company, why would they let that BPO have all that, right? Because that's where, and that was like point number 2 of my like board presentation, which is you're still going to have to sell that technology to the business.
Right.
At which point, like back to the dual track sale of one is to CX, and that's like the BPO play has some shot at doing that. The second one is to IT. Now, the IT and the CIO, who's increasingly more powerful in today's world, is there to say like, well, why wouldn't we just do it ourselves? And there, the argument of a BPO can do it better than you is very flimsy, because the BPO does not have access to your middleware, your tech stack. So anything they need for the AI agent to do that work, they need hooks in your systems. So the question then is like, why are you not doing it yourself? And therefore just, because someone's going to take that margin.
Right.
Like they're doing it for the margin.
Yeah.
You would be wise to either buy it from a software company
that's
going to run it for you, and then you can negotiate against them.
Yeah.
Or just fully build it yourself. That's the ultimate thing, right?
Right.
And that's where just the BPO doing all that, and you're doing all that while fighting the urge to just not automate and sell more humans, because that's the weight of your entire business, right? So the pricing conflict is the more you automate, like the fewer people you have.
Interesting.
Now, if you flip the pricing over to outcome-based, fine. If it still works, it works. If they allow you to do AI, fine. Then to actually achieve high success rates, you need to be fully plugged into their systems, which would assume that their systems are phenomenal.
Interesting.
Right?
So you heard of the General Catalyst move of like starting buying BPOs themselves and like turning them agentic. So you think they're full of shit? This is not going to work?
I think they're like, I know, Crescendo? Yeah, I mean, like I have not seen the company competitively show up in a single deal. I think they're sitting somewhere in a corner trying to, reduce handling time and do it slowly. I think it's a fool's errand. I think it's
interesting.
I think you might as well burn that money.
Interesting.
And I say this as someone who spent a year around, like parts of England you've not been to. I've been to.
I've been to a lot of England.
I've been. Look, I mean, I think I had like 10 trips back and forth to Glasgow. I love Glasgow. Glasgow's a great place to all Americans.
Nobody has ever told me that.
You need to go to Glasgow. It's phenomenal. I love Glasgow. People are great, incredibly phenomenal. Pubs and everything works till 3 a.m., unlike in England.
Oh, I love that.
It's also a grid-based system. So to Americans here, like you'll feel like you're home.
Like I'm home.
It's the only grid-based like downtown area.
I love that. I get lost in London all the fucking time because it's like it's like the path of the path of the cow. Or whatever,
I think Gotham in one of the films is like it's recorded in Glasgow. Because it has like the kind of like the grid line. American City. I might be wrong on that, but like there's been serious recording in Glasgow. For its semblance of an American city. But like I wanted to do this. I really wanted to do it, and I think it's. I think a lot of people still looking at this are hoping for, a really good run and margin expansion, multiple expansion, and Wall Street rewarding them for it.
It's just not happening.
The BPOs that have been successful in becoming more tech company than BPO, think of like Concentrix and others, they're moving towards like mass scale delivery and deployment of tech resources. Like you said, quality.
Right.
They're becoming known for like doing less of just like contact center job and more of like we implement this solution and that solution, right? They be trust. So they're just moving gradually towards like a tech services company.
Yeah.
And then from tech services, maybe they even build some product in, which serves as a differentiator.
Right.
You can't fight physics, right?
Right.
Whereas this BPO that I cannot describe to you the attitude of the person designated in procurement to deal with a BPO. You thought you dealt with like bad sales and hard sales and bad procurement. I'm sure you have like 20 good stories.
Yeah.
I have not seen people like this ever.
Interesting.
Right? Because like the mentality is like, okay, revenue share. How interesting. Cool. And then they'll look at you and they'll look through you deep in your like soul and say like, Manny, you can have 10%. And you'll be like, but I'm doing all the work. I'm doing all the lifting. And they'll be like, what's not clear here?
Yeah. Did I stutter?
You're a BPO. Look, you're a BPO. You will have
There's like 10 of you where he came from, and
and it's just like you're not trusted to, which brings you back to then you need champions like the CIOs and others, and then you need to sell them software again.
Right.
So if you're going to sell software, why would you carry that operational risk?
Right.
Why would you carry the people? Why would you be on the hook for both?
Yeah.
Because really, like, there's a dual incentive, which is then if you're going to have technology for one piece, maybe one set of prices, and this thing, humans as a backup, you really then have like a fighting revenue split.
Yeah.
And companies like CCaaS vendors and others who have like seat-based pricing, they're in the same conundrum where, they promise AI automation that's going to work, and yet they're charging you for 1,000 seats. So if product 2 is successful, it leads to a cannibalization of like 50% of like product 1's revenue.
It's kind of funny because I was talking to, I think it was Genesis, and I was like, so how are you seeing on agents? Like, what are you seeing in the horizon in terms of like your own pricing? And they're like, we're seeing nothing. Everything is business as usual. I'm like, that can't be, because there's a whole industry in funded as we speak, designed to replace you, and like you're seeing nothing really. And like I was wondering like how much of that is.
Well, I mean, back to your comment about private companies.
Yeah.
Like I've spoken with bankers who have laughed at like, the perpetual answer is they're IPOing next year. Right? There is like their pricing model for their AI thing, which doesn't work, takes a quantum physics degree to disentangle the price.
Yeah.
And it's by design because they want people to do something, paint the fence, tell your boss you bought AI, and move on.
Right.
And, it'll automate something. It'll automate what it must, what's so simple to do that even they can do it.
Right.
But beyond that, they have no incentive to move faster at all. Because, we can all talk about like, rapid revenue growth and higher margin, but like their CCaaS product is software. It is high margin.
Right.
So that
they're owned by private equity, so they're really incentivized to stay high margin.
Well, I mean, look, it's not that AI is not high margin if sold and priced right here, right? You know that as well as I do.
Yeah.
But it's just hard for them to do it at scale because it takes like an active disruption of a very old school business.
100%.
Right?
Yep.
So for them, it's actually best if they tell you we have a wide set of tools that help agents, that help you automate chat, that help you automate voice. And then if, just tick all the boxes, you bought AI and you're adopting it from a market leader, but they're not a market leader in AI automation. They're not even on the fringes, right?
Interesting. But they have a wide base.
They have a huge base. That's a good company. It's a very good company. It's trusted. It is one of two. You've got NICE, you've got Genesis.
Yep.
They're like the top two. NICE is public. Genesis is not.
But at least NICE made the move of buying that.
Cognigy,
Yeah, Cognigy, yeah.
Yeah, Cognigy is a good piece of technology. Bit pre-Gen AI, although they've implemented some Gen AI pieces in it.
Yeah.
Phenomenal CEO. I like the guy a lot.
German, right? German company, isn't it?
Yeah. They do chat, they do voice, a bit of assist, a bit of this, a bit of that. It helps them kind of like push themselves towards a future in which, like, again, you've bought everything.
Yeah.
They've not been a deep voice automation vendor historically. And our playbook against them was always like, well, call their best deployments, call ours, see what happens. Right?
So how does deep voice automation show up versus deep voice non-deep voice automation versus deep voice automation? Like that's it. The automated AI eventually you hand over to a human after a certain amount of conversations, or like how does it work?
Well, look, I mean, you hand off when you have to hand off, right? And there are two cases where you would hand off. One is like the human refuses to engage.
Okay.
And that happens to this day, right? The better you sound, the more you try, you get that percentage to go down, but you'll always have some percentage of people flat out refuse. Then the company has a choice to make, right? One is, okay, well, if they spoke with a human and refused to engage to that particular human, again, what is your like operating procedure? Do you hand them off to the boss, or do you go like, okay, well, thank you, goodbye?
Yeah.
So that's a choice you can make. The second piece is more difficult, and that's like, what if the AI agent cannot do something that a human can?
Yeah.
And that's still very common with many enterprises, because you have to be connected to first like the CRM, then probably like, think like payment systems, different banking systems, historic transactions, all of that. And, that promise of like a single pane of glass where you have like all the tooling in front of you and you can do it all the way that a human would. The truth is, for most companies, not even the human can.
Oh, interesting.
And then you have like different ways of dealing with it, creating tickets, handing off to more specialized departments that might have the access or the training to use certain kinds of software. So as agentic AI becomes more powerful, what I'm really excited by is just an AI agent that starts having all of that computer use available to them.
Right.
But that then kind of like comes in with an even deeper layer of InfoSec and enterprise comfort with URI as external vendors being able to do all that. I think that's where you'll see like a lot of like almost like cloud wars style engagements where you look at like your Genesis and Nice, which really don't have a lot of hooks into the actual backend systems.
Right.
It's for the Salesforces, Zendesks, and others, plus all the other software tooling that the company uses to be that orchestrator of that single pane of glass. And that's where like the real reward is. Right?
So let's talk about the game as it stands on the field right now. So you think that we're early or sort of like mid or late in the voice AI?
Early.
Okay,
we're
so
still
we're early.
And, I mean, think about it. Like, when's the last time you had a good automated voice experience on the phone?
Oh, I don't even remember.
Right.
I don't even call anymore.
You know, you're a startup CEO. You care about these things.
Yeah.
Like, and there isn't a lot. There's probably no more than like 1 or 2% of the calls that are automated. Right.
Oh, wow.
Well, actually, more are automated with old school, like press 1 for that, 2 for that.
But is it a case of like the low-hanging fruit has been taken, or is it a case that it's really no penetration at all?
A bit of both.
Okay.
Like, there's a lot more that, you know, even things that are not deeply integrated can do where, you know, and we tend to start with companies by saying, hey, you're a bank.
Yeah.
People probably, like for most banks, about 10 to 15% of their calls have people asking about setting up Apple Pay and Android Pay because you have to input your details and you have to talk them through it. And someone's on the phone dealing with that. Either you've politely declined to engage and hung up, which is like Patsy said,
right?
Or you're doing it for no revenue upside whatsoever.
Right.
So that's a call that can be automated and that you can do really well with like a competent agentic solution that talks to you for like 3-4 minutes, helps reassure you, helps you navigate through it, or helps you troubleshoot a different thing with your app, with your phone.
Yeah.
Think of like setting up smart homes,
right.
Different devices, Wi-Fi troubleshooting, all of that. So that's where AI can do a lot, even without the backend integrations.
Yep.
And then it becomes a game of like diplomacy and tariffs.
By the way, if that deflects, let's say 20% of the inbound calls, that's a massive win.
Yeah.
And especially if it's done with high quality, you know, with, you know, like an 11 Labs like voice with intonation and like a lot of empathy.
Yeah.
Like that's a massive win. So like that's still not done yet in your mind. Like that still needs, you know, to be normalized as a thing.
It's definitely not done yet. You'd know if it was. Whatever company you'd call would have that layer first.
Yeah.
Right. We call that zero touch resolution. And you know, it's been a huge like landing use case for us for most companies because it means that the business can buy something, implement it just with a telephony integration, you know, load up their knowledge base and stuff like that without really having like deep tested.
Got it. So that's a land grab right there. Because you're right. That I don't think everybody has implemented anything yet.
Not even close.
So why there's so many people coming into the space so quickly? Like it was you guys, and then Sierra got in, and then Decagon got in, and now Giga ML is getting in. Like there's and like Land, Vapi, they're all like looking at that part of the field and they're saying that's greener, and they're going that way. Like why is that becoming so productive?
Well, I mean, look, I think that broadly, and I think interestingly, everyone bought into the whole theory that like voices that only old people call and chat will take over the world. I don't know about you, but sitting there and kind of like chatting normally isn't really my definition of having a good time. And like, that's a hard one to parse because you're calling customer service. You're not having a good time. You know, you have a call, you have to join in your internet, it's not working. Like, that is what it is. However, everyone just assumed and believed that thing. Like, everyone will chat, no one's going to call. That's not true. For any generation.
Right.
Gen Z has a 71% proclivity to calling over texting. Gen Z. I don't want to tell them, like, you go to, like, older generations, it goes up to 98%.
Right? So, they can't even read the text.
Well, I mean, if you're, especially like if you can't see it that well or
right.
use things. But, you know, you might prefer to use text in some situations or in a really good integrated app experience. But now apps are out, you know? So agents and back to like ground zero, like voice is the better interface.
Right.
So now everyone's like kind of like accepted that voice is dominant and will continue to be dominant. Right.
When did that happen? That's really interesting. That's really interesting. So everybody thought chat was a preferred interface.
Yeah.
And then how many years ago people realized that is really not chat, that is
I'll
voice?
tell you that it's probably been since our Series C in 24 that I've not had to like spend the first 10 minutes defending why voice matters. Really, people were like, like you're an idiot. Chat's gonna take everything over, right?
That's funny.
And I was like, okay, like honestly, I never even really cared because I cared about solving voice so much. But I knew that it would stay like big, even if it wasn't dominant, it would stay big.
Right.
But now, like, even I'm surprised by how dominant it is because people just love talking. And if you think about it, like people, you and I could like respond over text messages and people could read it if they really had such a preference to reading or to texting. But like people like the human aspect of a conversation.
100%.
Right? Like our accents, everything.
Yeah.
Like it's part of who we are. And we're a lot better at expressing ourselves.
Right.
Naturally.
And just a lot more information is communicated through voice.
Yeah.
Interesting. So it's not like the world changed. It's that the recognition that this has been a problem change.
And also
now the
like,
market is backing it.
I think you also look at like our generation. We're like keyboard first.
Right.
We're like browser first.
Right.
Like the next generation comes in with like mobile, and they're like, let's be honest, like what you can produce on an actual keyboard is not the same as what you can do on a phone's keyboard. Yeah. Right. So that text channel gets suppressed. It becomes less usable. So I think that has partially played a role as well.
Interesting.
And then, voice is just not performed. Like your Siri sucks.
Yeah.
Is correct.
Got it.
Right?
Got it.
Like every year we've gotten better and better and better. It's not solved yet.
Got it. So the technology was a holdback.
It was a holdback for sure, right? So we're now a lot better than we ever were, right?
Yeah.
I think that like ChatGPT's voice mode is everything I thought would be needed for this to be used by everyone nonstop. And it's still not being used by everyone. So I think the real like UX challenges and what is the right UX and the right like experience, that's still like not been solved by any company.
Got it. Okay, so you got this new playing field of more people coming into, and the game is still young. So how does this play out? Is it gonna get verticalized? Is it gonna is it a winner take all? Is it gonna be a few winners take most? Like how do you play this out?
Yeah, no, I think
the market and for PolyAI.
Yeah. So, look, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a winner takes all market just because wherever we go, we just uncover. It's like you uncover a new continent, right? When you win like the right few clients and then you learn more, and I mean, you've heard of like the whole forward deployed mania, and that's the other thing I always had to defend to people. Right?
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it's
the forward deployed model, or the fact that you have to throw in people to implement.
Well, the forward deployed model.
Yeah.
Not necessarily like the physical forward deployed.
Yeah.
I think that's decreasingly the case because no one's ever.
But I thought Palantir sort of like already convinced the world.
Yeah, but like Palantir's become a new like one of the greats since when? 2 years ago?
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
That's true.
So, I think that now people can't get enough of the forward deployed. But the real truth there is
if you don't have it, you're not in the game.
Yeah. But I think what's really interesting is like once you uncover a new use case and you deploy it at scale, and then you have like a few 7-figure contracts in a space, you realize that you're basically building a whole new application for that space.
Yeah.
So it might get verticalized.
Interesting.
Right? Like the more we do in a certain vertical, the better we do in that vertical. And the easier it gets to scale it, to win new clients, to get live quickly.
Yep.
Right? You start building this diplomacy between like between the people who actually hold power in that vertical, right?
Yep.
Because it might be CRMs for a specific vertical, or payment systems, or the gatekeepers.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So there is, I think, quite a kind of like tagging game of like who's partnering with whom to do what right now. So it might get verticalized. It might be that you see Poly be very successful, like healthcare, hospitality.
Yeah.
FS are big verticals for us. I think there are other companies doing other specific sub cases where they develop the expertise where really it's not like model A versus model B, like this guy's speech recognition, this guy's voice quality, or LLM. It becomes like a set of enterprise requirements plus integration requirements plus deep workflow understanding and capability.
Interesting.
Which is the real kind of like moat.
So it's like we're playing Risk right now, where people are just taking countries, and then you'll figure out who invades who depending on the power they have.
Yeah, and I think power does matter, right? Like who gets to take whose Greenland is topical on the global political stage.
It's a little soon, but sure.
Yeah, it's it's the kind of place where everyone's doing something from the very strategic enterprise to mid-market.
Yeah,
in different verticals, things are moving at I think different speeds. And then there's like a whole echelon of, from a hyperscaler to like the likes of CCaaS and CRM into kind of like bulky startups like us and a few others that you named, to all the way to kind of like challengers that then kind of like carve out a niche that is much more specific.
So you remember when we met a few weeks ago, the whole GigaML drama unfolded on Twitter, but the backing of that was that they won a contract against CRM that put them on the map. Remember that? So That sort of came out of nowhere, right? Because like Sierra was considered to like whatever they land, they kind of own. But if you can't land and own what you land, then risk is really not happening yet. You know what I mean? Like you're still disrupting incumbents with better technology. At what point does that settle?
Well, first and foremost, Sierra is not an incumbent, right? Okay. Sierra is by itself a bit of a like PR first media land grab before anything else.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So we see them in deals. Sometimes they show up well.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
It's like any software game. I think, the chairman of OpenAI has access, right? And I think that's their, that's their main differentiator, right? The reason you and I are doing this podcast is that like PR and attention matters in today's world, right? Yeah. So
we're educating.
Yeah. And, he's educating because when the chairman of OpenAI wants to talk to you, you say yes.
Yeah.
And then he sells you some software on the side, right? Yeah. So I don't know how he can be bothered, but, good for him. So, like, I think they're like talk of displacement. People are experimenting, right?
Oh, interesting.
I think, GigaML is the DoorDash example. We've spoken to DoorDash on and off and like trial things with them on and off for a while, right? Including in that period, right? So I think that they were doing something with us, they were doing something with Sierra, they were doing something with GigaML. Then, you look at like the CEO invested in that company, like the drama continues. You're like, look, we trial things with many companies at any given point in time. In general, companies like DoorDash are not great clients of software businesses because at any point in time, they've got a legion of people internally who want to build it on their own.
Right.
So at that point, the forward deployed motion is like where I think this discussion gets more interesting because it is the quality of your forward deployed motion. And the real kind of like thing when you talk about outcome-based pricing, and you and I have spoken about this a few times, is you're kind of like asking to get paid on the intellectual value of the work you do on their behalf.
Right.
So in a fight for a client, say, for example, a DoorDash, right? I can assure you that like while a GigaML will have like the co-founders and everyone else working only on that deal, Poly will not have me even involved. And I presume Sierra does not have Brett Taylor thinking about the best way to do something in particular, right?
Yeah.
So then the quality of your deployment teams really, really matters. Right?
Oh, interesting.
And like I can tell you that if you are, you mentioned Palantir, deployment strategists, right? Like they have the shortest reporting line to me in the whole company, right?
Yeah.
Because that is the product signal.
Yeah.
Like they're the people who are solving and thinking really, really hard about how that client can benefit from AI.
Yeah.
Right. And, I have different levels. We have different levels of weekly calls. I don't miss a tier 1 strategic enterprise deployment call any week. That is like the most important. It's more important than the executive meeting at PolyAI to me because that's where the product signal flows the most strongly, right? And it is hard because if you think about it, at the end of the day, why would an enterprise not have that person internally doing all that? And the cynic's argument would be that outcome-based is temporary because you're trying to build something that will have lock-in long before the company can do all that by their own. Right? So what are we? Are we a McKinsey plus like a top Accenture team with proprietary technology of our own that gets better? Yes, we are. Right? And then the question is like, why verticalize? Well, so that you can go really deep and really far. And ahead of others, you can negotiate the landscape of integrations of everything needed to just unblock progress and help those companies realize huge value. But I can also tell you that, when our contracts scale up to serious 7 figures, there's someone at the company who goes, well, if this continues, I'll be paying you $100 million a year. They don't want to pay you $100 million a year.
Right.
And it's just something that they don't want to do regardless of whether they make a few $100 million. They might do it temporarily, but that's where I think like as tech vendor, you have to decide, are you a platform first? And then are you going for like scale where you will just like win everything at like what is perceived as fair? Versus are you the kind of like, Visa, MasterCard thing where you will win it so fast and so aggressively that you get to impose that like tax on your buyers. And I don't see it going that way simply because there's too many of us. And we're all quite good. And we're all achieving great outcomes. So the good news is in the game of risk, there's an infinite amount of untapped land. And I think for these like larger nations fighting for this, we just tend to double down on where it works. where it works well, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's outcome based, sometimes it's license based, even.
Yeah.
Not even just consumption based.
I mean, you just have to take off land at this point. Like, it doesn't matter how you charge.
Yeah,
like, you just have to like go get it.
That's right. And then, will you hold it? Did GigaML take Brett Taylor's Greenland? I guess they did, right? Will they keep Greenland, or will someone else take it, or will Greenland become a sovereign nation? My bet would be that they become a sovereign nation, building it on their own. But hey, who knows?
That's right. So what is in your forward deploy model, other than tech implementation, what are you teaching your customers? Is there any professional services? Is there best practices? Like, as you're seeing the market over and over again, like, are you approaching your customers with services first and tech second, or is always tech first and services second?
I mean, we're a tech company, so it's always tech first. Our goal is to have them running PolyAI's voice agents, chatbots.
Yeah, but their goal is to have a good customer resolution that shows up in their brand, right? Like, they're not.
Oh yeah.
They're not buying tech. They're buying. Customer comes in and they're going to leave delighted.
It really depends on whom, right? So it's a dual track purchase, right?
Yeah.
The CX, the business, is looking for that.
Yeah.
IT is looking for something that they can ideally use as well. So they are looking at cost always, right?
Right.
Especially, it used to be an evangelical sale where I had to convince people that they could automate, that this is not a crazy idea.
Yeah.
Now, it's almost like, a game of let's shoot out the demos. Who has the shiniest one? Cool. We'll remove these guys from consideration. We'll leave these guys in.
Yeah.
And then we see about the follow-on, right? When it comes to forward deployed, it's really about making sure that you put your best people on the most interesting and the highest value potential use cases, because you're gonna have to teach people a lot of things. One is what is a good or a bad experience? How do you get people to engage with a voice agent? If someone goes down, are you a human? No. Okay. Give me a human. How do you stay in that conversation?
Interesting.
Right. And that's a lot of our know-how is in that exactly. And kind of while we're getting you to the right, human, we might kind of buy you back in towards, hey, I could actually help you with that. What did you say it was? Or I pulled something about you. And are you calling about that thing in particular? And you go yeah, it is. And then I kind of bring you back in. Getting the willingness of people to buy into that thing is how you get ROI, because you need them to stay in the automated experience.
Right.
But then you're also teaching them around how to prioritize, what to implement, whether it's that landing use case, or do you go for a big, 30% of the calls are about refunds, so we need an integration with system X.
Yeah.
Then we need to get the IT to buy in.
Yeah.
So basically you're creating on their side teams that mirror your own.
Yeah.
People who will be the product owners of this new product.
Yeah.
Because it's helping a company build a website for the first time.
Right.
You're helping them build an agent, and most people do not have.
So who's the owner of PolyAI on the receiving end?
Usually, it's someone who used to work in the contact center.
Okay.
And increasingly, we see that becoming a command center, where they're the owners of this new product line.
Interesting.
And then they become some flavor of a transformation director. They own the initiative. They get more reports. They become more prominent, right? Many of the people we work with ended up, presenting to the boards of the entire company, and then kind of going and implementing the solution in other parts of the business or other geographies, and they become that subject matter expert.
Yep.
They're not the buyer. The buyer is someone usually in the reporting line of the chief operating officer.
Yep.
That budget line.
Yeah.
Or the CIO. And then often you need both.
Yeah.
And you need them to get along. And if
right. So when your sales cycles, how much is pilot prevalent versus just small lands versus big lands?
Well, I think that's always an implementation decision. We've had periods where we were predominantly doing small lands and then growing them. We've had periods.
But small lands are pilots for all intents and purposes.
Effectively, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So it's not really a question, right?
Right.
It's hard to land a 7-figure deal from the get-go without some kind of either a smaller contract going before, or a pilot that might even be free running for a while.
Okay.
So in a way, we try to do what's simplest for the customer, right? If it's someone who has a problem that is PolyAI sized, then we'll do whatever. If it's someone who does not, then we'll typically do smaller landings where the amount of forward deploy directly corresponds to the size of the ticket. So our platform is fully usable by clients themselves.
Yeah.
Now, will they use it, or do they need help to get onboarded? Most people do better if they have some help.
Right.
But their demotion then kind of like turns into two different ones. One is kind of like a more traditional professional services, like I've set you up, I've trained you on how to use the platform.
Yeah.
See you later.
Yeah.
And that there you have to put the pressure on the platform to be good enough.
Right.
And that's where I'll tell you that in the whole like overfunded galore that is like Sierra shaped, they don't really go platform because they just think they're going to forward deploy their way to anything. And our experience, because we've been at it longer and have much more scaled and successful case studies, is you must have a strong platform because you have a whole set of constituents in IT whose job is not to have PolyAIs or Sierras like deployment teams taking over the show. Because again, it's not rational for the buyer. They don't want you to have that kind of sovereignty. Like if I'm buying an aircraft carrier from you, like maybe I'll rent out your officers for a while to help me like train my own.
Yeah.
But like I don't want your officers there when the war starts.
Right.
Because like I don't know that you'll have my best interests at heart.
Right.
Come renewal, come anything. Do I have the right data?
Right.
And that's where just I've been at it for a while and expect to be at this for many, many more years to come. You have to do what's best for the customer. And if you do that, then like value follows. You bring them more value.
Yeah.
You end up getting paid more, right?
Yeah. But at this point, everybody's building a platform. Like nobody's selling you like an agent for just this. Like everybody tells you the agent for this. And then they say, and you can build agents from now on. Here's my forward deploy. He'll build them for you.
Yeah, I mean, everyone says that. I think like there's a difference in just how much they live that reality, right?
Oh, interesting.
How much it is, because, and that's where like the outcome-based discussion becomes very interesting, right? Because if I'm telling everyone it's outcome-based and that you'll just pay me for a cut of where we are successful, that's almost like, Chinese companies coming in to build infrastructure in Africa and saying, hey, we'll build it, but we get to have this and that and that. And in the end, you get very concerned because you don't know what kind of concession you're giving there, right?
Yeah.
So it works in, I think, low stakes areas where the upside is high, but the need to do something is not very high, right? Maybe you'll build me my 4th highway and the first 3 I'll pay for on my own because I want to have full control of them. I don't want you to control them, right? So we do a lot of mission critical use cases. We do medical transport stuff. We do like power and gas outages. We do like booking calls for Vegas that are tickets of like a few $1,000.
Yeah.
And people care that it's like superb.
Yeah.
And that 20% doesn't go to an online travel agency.
Yeah.
Because believe it or not, half the people still call to make a hotel reservation in Vegas.
Interesting.
Right? So like, I was very surprised by that. No matter how invested I am, invoice that is like insane, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to something like that, it's rare that they will just say, well, you can have 10% of that $1,000 reservations. Because then, it's human nature. They'll go, well, maybe this guy's going to take 10%. What's the difference between these guys and the online travel agency?
Right.
So then you go back towards like, okay, who's building it? For what reason? And that pulls you back towards more of a like consumption-based thing where...
So how are you pricing right now? So it's mostly minutes at the moment, right?
Consumption-based is, I think, just under half.
Okay.
It is the largest. And then outcome-based is decent. It's about a quarter of our revenue.
Okay.
And then about, I think, quarter to even 30% is license-based.
Interesting. License what, for the site? Like a one
So
price?
it turns out that for businesses that are more like less one contact center and more, distributing costs to constituents, be it like doctors' offices or restaurant sites or different hotel sites, they don't want to do the accounting of like I use this many minutes or even like outcomes, right?
Right.
Where it's just like then you have to resell the pricing model.
Right.
What they prefer is like it works, it's value generating. Can I afford $400 per month per site? Will the site say yes if they even get asked? Yep, cool, okay, done, right? So like, and there's that, and then there's like the, everyone's favorite ELA for very large ticket contracts.
Yeah.
That I've seen at the end of very large contracts that look like they're scaling forever. And then someone goes like, look, I need to know what I'm going to pay.
Right.
That's the other enemy of outcome-based, right?
Yeah.
Where it's not predictable.
Yeah.
And they kind of go like, okay, look, either you've sold it at a level where, the CEO's underwriting it, it's fine.
Right.
Or you kind of go and say, okay, well, like $5 million a year will do. right?
Interesting.
And like,
so you just take it off the table at 5 million, you can just go done.
Yeah. So like that.
So who pays you per outcome?
I don't really want to go into specifics of
or like what
clients.
type of like dynamic you have with the seller, where they say like, yes, fine, like when I win, you win, versus per minute, which is, you just pay my cost.
Well, I think that when people look at how successful it'll be, depending on exactly where in the kind of like hierarchy and the shape of the org it is, like it can be helpful to say, if it doesn't work, you're not going to pay, right? If it's something that tries to answer a question, tries to get them through, and then in the end, it hands off to a human, in theory, that will produce no value. In fact, it's negative from a value perspective because it...
You didn't help the customer.
You actually made the experience worse.
Right.
So then in that case, you can be like, well, if I made it better, I'll get paid. And that, I think, helps some buyers be assured, and especially for the more managed service, less of a like technology platform sell, where, if they're going to delegate the authority of what you're going to do, then that makes sense because it aligns your incentives with theirs. So it is something that is better for smaller companies, right? And in this space, if you look more broadly, Intercom, Zendesk have large, mostly like non-enterprise customers where they charge per resolution. And, that tends to work for them and those buyers. And
but
again,
that's chat only, right? Like
it is chat only, right?
Right.
But either way, right? Like I think where they have their own little map of like risk is that they have customers for whom they're the system of record. That's a big deal.
Right.
So they get to own like first party the business that others need like their tooling for, right?
Yeah.
So I think there it can be beneficial and it's working for them. I think they've both built 100 million plus ARR businesses on top of their existing customer bases.
Right.
So I think that makes sense. I think for a large enterprise, that's where, if you're undertaking to use technology to get leverage for your business, then again, if it's something that's a fringe use case that you don't care about that much and you probably wouldn't fund that highway, then you're probably okay with like concessions, i.e. outcome based.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're kind of going closer towards like what makes sense. And again, like it doesn't mean the pricing by itself is not interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe you're attributing it differently to different parts of the business and you still need your kind of stuff for it. But outcome based can be a bit more challenging there.
Yeah. No, this is super interesting. And I really, this is being one of the most, exciting conversations about the space I had in a long time, because you being at it, you're probably one of the pioneers of voice AI for the whole industry. And, clearly you have this massive wins and this massive areas in the risk game.
Yeah.
That is keep.
Well, it's super interesting. It's like, the kind of like, the new world circa, 1600.
Yeah.
It is very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Like I'm having a lot of fun.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, congrats on all the success. Congrats on your move to the US. I know that it's happening as we speak. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.